In the middle of a harsh, unforgiving winter, a small, white cat named Snowflake wandered the snow-covered streets of the town. She had been abandoned by her owner when the cold was too much to handle. The streets were empty, and the wind howled, carrying with it a bitter chill. Snowflake's fur was matted with snow, and her paws were sore from the cold, yet she kept moving forward. She was a survivor, but even the strongest of creatures feel the cold gnawing at their bones. Snowflake was lost and alone. Her wide, green eyes scanned the streets, hoping to find a familiar face, someone to comfort her. The days were long and cruel, and her stomach growled with hunger. She had been living on scraps, struggling to survive. As the night grew darker, a soft cry reached her ears. It was faint, almost like a whisper in the wind. Snowflake's ears perked up, and she began following the sound. It grew louder as she moved closer, and to her surprise, she found a small bundle in the snow, an abandoned baby, crying helplessly in the freezing cold. Snowflake's heart raced as she approached the baby. It was clear that the child had been left behind, without any sign of warmth or care. The baby's small, frozen hands were reaching out, and its cries echoed in the night. Snowflake didn't hesitate. She nudged the baby gently, curling her body around it to offer warmth. For the first time in days, Snowflake felt like she had a purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was protecting something that needed her, and in that moment, Snowflake knew she had to do whatever it took to save this helpless little soul. As Snowflake huddled around the baby, trying her best to offer warmth, the night seemed to grow colder. The storm picked up again, with the snow falling harder, burying everything in a thick, icy blanket. Snowflake's fur was soaked, and her strength was fading. She wasn't used to this much cold for so long. With every passing minute, the baby's cries grew weaker. The child's tiny body was trembling, and Snowflake could feel the life fading from it. She knew she had to act fast, but she was exhausted and barely able to keep herself warm. Her own paws were numb, and her stomach twisted in hunger. Still, the instinct to protect the baby pushed her forward. Suddenly, Snowflake heard the sound of footsteps approaching through the snow. Her ears twitched, and her heart skipped a beat. Was it someone coming to help? The footsteps grew louder, but as the figure came closer, Snowflake realized it wasn't a friendly face. It was a man, his face cold and hard, with a cruel look in his eyes. He was the one who had abandoned the baby, and he was coming back to make sure it was gone. Snowflake's fur bristled with fear, but she didn't back down. She stepped protectively over the baby, her tiny body standing between it and the man. The man sneered at her, raising his hand as if to push her aside. Snowflake's heart raced, but she refused to move. The baby needed her. In that moment, Snowflake knew she had to protect this innocent soul, no matter what. With a final glance at the man, she turned and sprinted as fast as her tired body would allow. The man shouted after her, but Snowflake didn't stop. She had to find shelter, find help, anything to keep the baby safe. Every step felt like a battle, but Snowflake's determination burned bright. She wasn't going to let anything happen to the child. Snowflake's paws sank deep into the snow as she raced through the blizzard, the baby's small body pressed close to her. The wind howled, biting at her fur, but she pushed forward, determination shining in her eyes. Each step was harder than the last, and her muscles ached from exhaustion. But the baby needed her. She couldn't stop now. The cold was unbearable, and Snowflake's vision blurred with the falling snow. Her breath came in short gasps, and her stomach gnawed at her with hunger. She had been without food for so long, but there was no time to think about that now. She had to keep going, no matter how weak she felt. The baby's cries had stopped, and that terrified Snowflake even more. Was the child still alive? She could feel the little body growing colder in her arms, and her heart raced with panic. Snowflake whimpered softly, trying to nudge the baby awake, but there was no response. Ahead of her, she saw a faint light through the swirling snow. There, in the distance, was a small cabin. It was the only sign of life she had seen in hours. Hope surged in her chest. She pushed forward, her legs feeling like lead as she neared the door. But just as she reached the cabin, a gust of wind slammed the door shut, and Snowflake's paw slipped on the icy ground. She fell to the snow, and the baby slipped from her grasp. Snowflake let out a desperate meow and scrambled to her feet. She couldn't afford to lose the baby now. But the snow was thick, and the wind howled louder than ever, drowning out any other sound. Panic clawed at Snowflake's chest as she searched frantically in the snow. Where was the baby? Her paws were freezing, and her fur was matted with ice, but Snowflake refused to stop. She knew that if she didn't find the baby, all her effort would be for nothing. The snow was falling harder now, and she could barely see in front of her. But just when she was about to give up, she heard a soft, weak cry in the distance. Snowflake's heart leaped. There, just beyond a snowbank, she saw the baby. Her paws trembled with relief as she carefully nudged the child with her nose, trying to wake it up. The baby's skin was icy, and it was so still. Snowflake's breath caught in her throat as she felt for a pulse. Nothing. In that moment, Snowflake felt a wave of hopelessness wash over her. She had come so far, fought through the storm, and now it felt like it was all in vain. The baby wasn't moving, and her strength was fading. She had no energy left to keep going, to try again. She was alone, in the middle of nowhere, with no one to help. But then, Snowflake remembered the warmth she had felt when she had curled around the baby in the snow. She thought of the moment when she had offered comfort, when she had protected the little one from the man. She couldn't let that be the end. She couldn't give up. Snowflake nudged the baby gently again, this time with more determination. Her small body trembled from the cold, but she was driven by something stronger than fear. She licked the baby's face, rubbing her own warmth against the frozen skin. She had to bring it back to life. She had to do it. Minutes passed, and Snowflake didn't stop. She licked, nuzzled, and gently pressed her body close to the baby. Her paws were numb, but she pushed on, her determination unwavering. Slowly, the baby's tiny fingers twitched, then its chest rose with a soft, shallow breath. Snowflake let out a small, relieved meow as she realized that the baby was still alive. The storm raged on, but Snowflake's heart filled with hope. She had saved the baby once, and now she could do it again. She wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. Snowflake's heart pounded in her chest as she held the baby close, trying to keep it warm against her fur. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Snowflakes whipped around her, stinging her face like tiny needles. Her paws were frozen, her body exhausted, and every breath she took felt like a struggle. But there was no time to rest. Snowflake's eyes darted around in desperation, looking for any sign of safety. The cabin was too far away, and she knew she couldn't make it back there. Her body was giving out, and with every second that passed, the baby's fragile life hung in the balance. Snowflake felt a deep pit of fear in her stomach. She was running out of options. In the distance, through the storm's fury, Snowflake thought she saw movement. At first, she thought it was just the wind, swirling the snow in strange patterns. But then she saw it again, a figure, walking toward her. Her heart skipped a beat. It was the man, the one who had abandoned the baby. Snowflake's body froze, her fur standing on end. She recognized the cruel look on his face as he trudged through the snow, eyes fixed on her with a cold determination. Snowflake's instinct screamed at her to run, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. She had nowhere to hide. She stood tall, her small frame shaking with the weight of the decision she had to make. She couldn't let this man take the baby. The baby was hers to protect now, and she would fight with everything she had. Her fur bristled, and she let out a low, warning growl, standing between the man and the child. The man didn't seem surprised by her defiance. His lips curled into a sneer as he stepped closer, reaching out with one hand, as if to grab her by the scruff of her neck. Snowflake's claws dug into the snow beneath her, her body tense with anticipation. But just as he lunged toward her, a loud voice echoed through the storm. "Stop! Snowflake's ears perked up. Through the chaos, she saw another figure. This time, it was a woman, running toward them. The woman was calling out to the man, her voice sharp and full of authority. The man hesitated, his gaze flicking from Snowflake to the woman, and for a brief moment, he seemed unsure. This was Snowflake's chance. With a burst of energy, she dashed toward the woman, the baby cradled tightly in her mouth. She leaped up to the woman's legs, meowing urgently, pleading for help. The woman knelt down, her eyes wide in shock as she saw the baby and the brave little cat standing before her. I can't believe it, the woman whispered, her voice trembling. You saved her? Snowflake meowed again, her body trembling with relief and exhaustion. She had done it. She had fought with all her strength, against all odds, to protect the baby. And now, in the arms of a kind stranger, the baby would finally be safe. The storm still raged around them, but in that moment, everything else faded away. Snowflake had done what no one expected. She had saved the baby, and together, they had survived. As the woman cradled the baby in her arms, Snowflake felt the weight of her exhaustion catch up with her. Her legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto the snow, too tired to stand. The warmth from the woman's arms wrapped around the baby, giving Snowflake a sense of peace she hadn't felt in hours. She had done it. She had saved the baby. The woman gently stroked Snowflake's fur, her voice soft and soothing. You're a hero, aren't you? She whispered, her hands trembling as she looked down at the brave little cat. Snowflake let out a weak purr, her body sore but content. For the first time, she could relax. The baby was safe. That was all that mattered. The storm began to ease, the wind calming and the snow slowly settling. The woman carefully stood, holding the baby close to her chest as she looked around for shelter. Snowflake rose shakily to her paws, watching as the woman walked toward the nearby cabin, the baby nestled safely in her arms. Snowflake followed, her steps slow but steady. The warmth of the cabin beckoned, a promise of rest and safety. The woman smiled down at Snowflake. Come on, little one, she said softly. You've done enough today. Inside, the woman laid the baby down on a soft bed, covering her with blankets. Snowflake curled up beside her, her body still trembling but filled with a deep, quiet joy. The world outside might still be cold, but in this moment, inside the warmth of the cabin, Snowflake had given the greatest gift: safety, love, and a second chance. The days that followed were filled with warmth and healing. Snowflake, once a weary traveler in the cold, now had a safe, cozy home. The woman, whose name was Grace, took care of her with love and tenderness, making sure she had plenty of food and a warm place to sleep by the fire. Every morning, Snowflake would curl up at the foot of the baby's crib, watching over her like the guardian angel she had always been. The bond between Emma and Snowflake grew stronger every day. They shared quiet moments, exchanging glances that spoke of mutual respect and love. Snowflake had found her forever family, one that would cherish her, protect her, and always keep her safe. And in return, Snowflake had given them more than they could have ever expected: a miracle. As Snowflake nestled into her new bed, her eyes closed in contentment, she knew that she had found peace. She had fulfilled her purpose, and in doing so, had changed the lives of everyone she touched. If you've ever thought about adopting a pet, remember the story of Snowflake and the little baby. Animals like her give so much love and joy. Consider opening your heart and home to one today. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this.